Hi everyone, this is Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and today we're going to be discussing a case from the New York Injury Cases blog. And this was a recent submission in the blog. It came through on December 28th of 2024, just a few days ago, and it involves a medical malpractice case that has punitive damages in it. So let's talk about this case. Let's find out what this case is about, how they were able to have punitive damages in the case, and what happened. So back in September 8th of 2015, the plaintiff sought medical treatment from the defendant doctor, who was an interventional radiologist, and he specialized, the doctor did, in the treatment of prostates. So the plaintiff was 60 years old and he had a history of an enlarged prostate, and he had been recently diagnosed with 2 tumors in his prostate, and he was concerned that he may have prostate cancer. So the doctor, the defendant, removed 8 biopsy samples to test for possible cancer. But at the same time, before any results were obtained from the biopsy, the doctor performed an invasive FLA procedure, which is a focal laser ablation. What they do with the focal laser ablation is it uses a laser to treat prostate cancer by heating and then killing the tumor cells. So this was the procedure that he had done. So what ended up happening is that later on, they learned that the biopsy was negative and there was no cancer. But as a result of the procedure, the plaintiff suffered significant and debilitating injuries to his urinary system, his lower gastrointestinal system, and he had compromised sexual function. So he sued the doctor, claiming that this FLA procedure was unnecessary, it was not indicated, and that it was done without informed consent. And the case went to trial in the Bronx, and the Bronx jury found the defendant deviated from what is accepted medical practice, and that this FLA procedure caused injuries to the plaintiff. And the jury then awarded plaintiff pain and suffering damages in the amount of $2,575,000. And it was broken down as $500,000 for past pain and suffering for 4 years, $2,075,000 for future pain and suffering for 16.6 years. And the defendant appealed, arguing that there was no basis for liability against him and that the damages award was excessive. And the first department in the appellate division held that both the liability and the damages verdicts were actually fine and were affirmed. And plaintiff also asserted a claim for punitive damages, and the jury found that punitive damages should be awarded because there was testimony that the procedure was experimental and that the defendant doctor directed changes to the plaintiff's medical records. And that finding was vacated because of an error in the jury charge. It doesn't say what the error was, but when there's an error in the jury charge, the judge vacated that, but then they could have another trial on punitive damages. Turning to the actual appellate division decision, we see that the appellate division basically says that there was evidence. The first point was the appeal basically said, hey, dismiss this case, right? Because there's no basis for a verdict that this doctor did anything wrong. And they said, no, look, there's testimony from the plaintiff's medical expert, who's also a doctor, that this entire procedure is experimental. It's not indicated when you don't have the biopsy results, and that it's a deviation from the standard of care, and that this is the procedure that caused plaintiff's injuries. So that this testimony provides a sufficient basis for the jury's verdict. And so that was allowed. And then the defendant said that there was a failure to poll the jury, but the judge said that doesn't really matter because the defendant waived their right to poll the jury. They were asked, I asked the parties whether they wanted to poll the jury after the jury's verdict, and the defendant's counsel responded he did not. So if he didn't want to poll the jury when the judge asked him, he can't then on appeal say, well, we didn't poll the jury. And, it's kind of like a slimy maneuver. And then the defendants also waived any claim that the verdict was inconsistent because they didn't raise it at the time where the jury was still present. And in any event, the judge says there's no proof, there's no evidence that anyone was confused or that there was anything that would lead to an inconsistent verdict. And with respect to the damages, the judge said, this is the appellate division, the higher court, that there's no proof that the damages award deviated from what is fair and reasonable compensation under CPLR 5501C. The jury properly based its award on testimony by the plaintiff and his doctor regarding urological and sexual dysfunction that resulted from the procedure. And they said that with respect to punitive damages, the testimony from the defendant's expert essentially conceded that the procedure was experimental, as well as testimony from the defendant's employees that the doctor directed changes to the plaintiff's medical records after it was determined that his biopsy was negative. So after the biopsy was negative, the doctor told his workers in the clinic to change the medical record. So that's why it could be punitive, because you're not supposed to obviously do that. And then again, after the lawsuit was filed, there was also evidence that the doctor again said to his employees, hey, change the medical records, I guess because he saw that he was being sued. And so they said the testimony properly supported the trial court's decision to grant the motion for punitive damages, and it cites some case law. And basically they're saying the issue of whether the evidence supports the jury's findings that plaintiffs were entitled to punitives is academic because the trial court vacated the award and set the claim for future retrial based on an error in the jury charge. So the punitive damages will be a separate trial. So it's an interesting case. The injuries we could also turn, if we look at like NICEF or E-Law, we could look at the actual injuries claimed in the Bill of Particulars, and there was damage to the prostate, urinary retention, there was catheter, the use of a catheter, there was voiding dysfunction, urinary incontinence, sexual dysfunction, loss of libido, irritable bowel syndrome, weight loss. So he had some serious injuries, definitely some serious injuries from this procedure. If you're doing this procedure on like a normal prostate, it could burn and kill the normal cells. It's supposed to be killing the tumors, but if he didn't have cancer, he wouldn't need this FLA procedure. So yeah, that's basically the case. Yeah, $2,575,000 total. The case did take a long time. It was from 2015. So already it's been going on for 10 years and they still have to do this punitive damages trial in the future. Hopefully they can get that case fairly quickly. So let us know what you think. We are here for you. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families. Okay, everyone, all the best. Bye-bye.